You destroyed every chance I ever had." She slammed the heavy folder on the table. "You stole everything, even Mom's name." The bare bulb above buzzed as she stepped forward, voice shaking. "You're done, the lies stop here." A chair scraped. The man at the far end of the basement spread his hands, laughing. "You have no proof." Her answer was a single sheet slid into the pool of light between them. "Read it out loud." Papers rattled, silence pressed in. His next words came out choked. "Where did you get this?" She leaned closer, her breath frosting in the dank air. "Right where you buried the truth, you missed something." Feet scuffed concrete. "Call your lawyer," she said, jaw clenched. "You're going to need him." Somewhere above, heavy boots stamped closer, wood groaning. To understand how she ended up in that locked, reeking basement with everything on the line and nothing left to lose, you'd have to go back 2 weeks, before the secrets started clawing their way up through the floor. The bakery clock read 2:43 a.m. when Tessa flicked off the oven's last orange coil, wiping dough from her arm with the hem of her faded sweatshirt. Every muscle ached. The low hum of refrigerators was broken by a single, sharp cough from the cot tucked behind the mixer. She glanced over. Mila, her 6-year-old, shifted fretfully in the thin blankets, inhaler clenched in one hand. Tessa's stomach clenched tighter than any bread knot. Less than half a vial of albuterol left, cash register already bled out by rent and electric, payday not until Friday. She checked her phone, one notification blinked at her, probate hearing. All parties must appear in person. Final distribution, 14 days. She sucked in a breath, heart stuttering. The old family knife twisted again. After Mom died, the will had shocked the whole county. The farm, stocks, her home, gone, all transferred cleanly to the Children of Solace, that smiling group who'd swept in during her mother's final year, feeding on nostalgia and loneliness. The one thing Tessa got, the abandoned hunter's cabin at Hollow Creek. A punchline, barely more than 4 rotting logs on 45 tangled, unmown acres. She'd never even seen the place. Her father had banished all talk of the cabin, insistent it was worth less than a junk car. At the memorial, she'd tried to speak up, but the children's pastor cut her off. "The paperwork is final, Tessa," he'd said, gray ponytail swinging. Her cousins smirked behind clasped hands. She'd stayed silent, not for herself. Mila needed stability, not more chaos. But last night, sorting the crusty bakery mail bin, she'd found a slim envelope wedged between bills. The seal matched her mother's favorite stationery. Inside, only a single iron key, old and nearly black with age. Taped to the back was a torn slip of paper. "Don't let them forget what they did. Root cellar." 5 words, the only thing she'd inherited with her name on it. If you've ever watched someone sell your past out from under you, or skipped sleep to give your kid one safe breath more, stay close. Because what I found behind that cellar door and what came after, no one was ready for. She left Mila sleeping in the Chevy, windows cracked for air, and started out through the grass that clawed at her ankles. The heavy key pressed inside her pocket felt colder than the morning fog. As she marched, shadows from tall cottonwoods ribboned the ground in shifting patterns. The old lane, little more than muddy ruts with torn-up tire tracks, vanished before the porch came into view. Hollow Creek's cabin looked worse than legend. Roof curling, one window knocked out and patched with cardboard, porch steps caved in so deep she had to boost herself up on a splintered post. For a moment she imagined her mother sitting out here, sun flaring on a glass of sweet tea, laughter echoing through fields that now stood empty. But that was a different time, a different mother. This place felt haunted not by ghosts but by memory corrupted. Mid-stride, she tripped on something half-buried beside the porch. A jagged stone, shaped just like a heart, protruded from the mud. Blinking down, she saw faint letters scratched into it, "May you rest in truth." The same handwriting as on the key's slip. She snapped a photo, fingers trembling. Her phone buzzed, low battery. Just as she swiped it away, Mila's cough knifed through the stillness, then quiet. That memory, the night her father had stormed through the house, shouting at her mother about leaving the past alone, flickered at the edges of her mind, then vanished. She pushed the memory back and stood straighter. 2 padlocks hung from the root cellar at the rear, each gnawed with rust. Tessa fumbled the key into the top lock. It turned with a groan. She bent at the waist, sweat slicking her brow despite the chill. From beneath, a wave of dry, earth-choked air washed out, age and rot heavy with secrets. She pried the second lock loose, braced herself, and pulled. Hinges screamed as the steel door swung back to reveal a steep, crumbling stair vanishing into the dark. She hesitated, then descended, every step echoing her pulse. At the bottom, her flashlight beam caught on something shiny, a band of wire wrapped 3 times around a battered tin box that sat on a dirt shelf. A tag was taped to the lid. She slid her thumb across the dust. Open if you love her, not them. That was the moment Tessa knew there would be no going back. She undid the wire, hands trembling so hard the box rattled. Inside, carefully folded, was a letter. The faint scent of lilac clung to the yellowed paper. She opened it, breath caught. Dear Tessa, if you're reading this, I am gone. I am so sorry for what I let happen to us. They were stronger than I thought. My voice was drowned out, my warnings ignored. The children promised to forgive my sins, to heal the harm. But the harm was theirs to begin with. Do not trust them, not Pastor Lane, not their money, not the bearing of gifts. If you are brave enough, go deeper. Find me where the memories sleep. I could not save you, but perhaps you can save what's left of me and make right what they erased. Tears blurred the lines, the air seemed to press tighter, pulse leaping. She scanned the shelves, behind the tin box, a seam in the wall. Kneeling, she brushed back dirt, uncovering a third lock serviced with oil, not rusted. The heavy key fit again. She twisted. A hidden panel slid free. The hollow echoed as she pulled, light spilling into a new space hollowed beneath the house. The smell changed. Less dirt, more metal, and something else, sweet and sharp and wrong. Her flashlight's beam flicked across tarps, then onto a shape bundled at the far wall, mummified in wax cloth. Skeletal fingers protruded from exposed wrists, caught in a grasping pose, yellowed bones flecked with fraying fabric. She recoiled, heart slamming. Stamped into the concrete nearby, property of D. Sunderland, 1958. That name, her mother's maiden name. Another shape, smaller, rested beside the remains, a lead strongbox with a faded seal. She forced her hand steady long enough to pry it open. The sight inside nearly undid her. Embossed government bonds, 40 in all, dated before Kennedy. The calculations ran like a tide through her mind, decades of interest. This was the kind of money that shifted fates. She barely had time to register it before her phone buzzed again, signal weak, but a new text. Probate 14 days to contest. After that, done forever. Hope and a deadline. She needed help, but who would believe her after years of being branded the black sheep, the unstable daughter, the one no one could trust? But she couldn't afford to wait. Shoving the bonds and letter into her tote, Tessa fled up the stairs, legs shaking but gaze steeled. Overhead, the first rays of sun cut through the trees. She glanced back at the cellar's gaping maw, promising herself she'd return. First, she needed an expert. By dawn, she'd found her way to Vernon's Insurance, one of the last brick-front shops still hanging on in the dusty nearest town. The bell jangled as she entered, and Vernon himself, stooped, broad-shouldered, bushy-browed, looked up from his ledger. Well, I'll be, he grunted as Tessa, dirt-streaked and wild-eyed, laid the government bonds across his desk. Wasn't expectin' Custer's ghost this morning. I found them in the Hollow Creek cabin, she managed, voice scraping its way up, hidden below the cellar. Sealed since my mother was a girl. And there's more. Please, Vernon, I can't explain it all right now. He rolled the bonds in ink-stained fingers, whistling. These here are worth a king's ransom in today's dollars, but he squinted at the red seal. Been flagged before. Mind if I ask those children folks, any of 'em see you come in here? Not yet, but they know the probate ends in 2 weeks, and there's evidence of a crime. You ever hear the name D. Sunderland? Vernon's brows shot up. He pushed a mug aside, leaning in. Lord, girl, you better sit. Sunderland, she vanished in 81. Thought it was a husband ran off with her, but, he exhaled slow. Let me get someone on the line quiet-like. As Vernon dialed, Tessa shut her eyes, hands gripping the chair. This was real. Money, yes, but murder too, and Mila needed every ounce of her alive. The phone crackled. "Stan," Vernon grunted. "I got something hot, Hollow Creek bonds and a body, send your most discreet." A pause, static, then, "You have 14 days, don't let that clock beat you, Tess." 14 days, she repeated, "or they win anyway." The sound of her voice, too hoarse, snapped her awake. The magnitude of what she'd stumbled on was doubling by the minute. The next morning, as Tessa loaded Mila into the truck, her daughters breathing still shallow but steadier, the Children of Solace's van bounced up the drive, their leader, Pastor Lane, stepping out with sharp little steps. "Oh, Miss Sunderland," he called, serene as church glass. "Heard you were up here snooping. Is there some item you think belongs to you?" She bit back the urge to scream. "Instead, the land is still in my name. But everything else has been transferred legally and in right spirit by your mother's own hand. Perhaps you were meant for simpler things." The glint behind his smile was knife-like. She stiffened. Vernon's words came back, "Don't let that clock beat you." "You might want to stay off my property," she said, every syllable ice. His face didn't change. "Unwise, making threats you can't keep." She lifted Mila, whose eyes darted uneasily. "Stay away, consider that my only warning." He glanced towards his van, two suited men waiting inside. "You always were a dramatic child, Tessa. I'll assume you're only after the attention." He turned away and something inside her snapped. For years she'd choked on her own silence, no more. Inside the cab, Mila crowned with worry. "Mama, why are the church people mad?" "They want what doesn't belong to them, baby, but we're not letting them scare us off." That night, as thunder stuttered beyond the trees, she turned the cabin's old rotary phone and called the number on Vernon's card. "Get me Stan," she whispered when a voice answered. His reply surprised her. "You have what we need, but you need it safe. Meet me Friday downtown, don't be seen." They met in a cafe shadowed by the abandoned train depot, windows gray with dust. Stan, all navy suit and gray stubble, eyed her as if weighing up a mark. She let the letter and photos spill onto the table. The air was thick between them. Stan kept his hands on the tabletop, speaking just above a whisper. "This isn't just about the bonds, is it?" She shook her head. "There's a body, hidden for decades, tied to the children, and there's evidence of trades, insider trading, SEC levels." He sighed, rubbing his chin. "Miss, this blows the doors off the usual family spat. You understand how big a danger that puts you in." She nodded, mouth set. "What happens now?" Stan's voice dropped. "You bring me the physical evidence, bonds, photos, anything. I'll walk it straight to the SEC. IRS gets it next, but you have to move fast." She gathered the papers, hands barely steady. "Then let's finish this." Mila's cough echoed in the cab as they left. For the first time, Tessa found herself scanning the rearview mirror for more than potholes. Her next move was the county clerk's office. Midday sun leaked through cracked blinds as she filed the contest paperwork, her hands registering the weight of her last chance. Behind her, shuffling feet and familiar laughter, her cousin Jim, hair slicked back cheap, Pastor Lane at his side. They'd come to witness her fail. "Well, look who finally got guts," Jim drawled. She faced him. "I'm not here for you, or your church." Lane's eyes went cold. "You're chasing ghosts, Tessa. You'll end up disappointing even your daughter." She bit back her reply, shoving the filed papers across the counter. Back in the truck, Mila asleep against her side, she called Stan again. "It's moving, but they're watching me." His response was tiger-sharp. "Keep your evidence close. If you see them coming, get to Vernon. The moment we get IRS on site, their house of cards falls 100%. That night, thunder stalked the horizon again. She stared at the cabin's map, tracing every inch. Something gnawed at her, the heart-shaped stone, the wrappings on the remains, the seal. She dug deeper, turning up a faded photo of her mother and a man she'd never seen, sunlight flashing on a ring that bore the same symbol as the children's badge and the old bonds. The next morning, day 10, 4 left, her world shifted. Federal agents drove up, suits and close-cropped hair, badges flashing. They went straight to the cabin. Tessa led them to the cellar, every step shaking. Inside, lights shone cold over the wrapped skeleton, the box of bonds. Stan looked over his shoulder, whispering, "You did right. This is enough to bring them down." As the evidence was catalogued, the pastor hovered outside, tension ratcheted high. Her cousin Jim paced, eyes slitted, phone glued to his fist. When she walked outside, Lane blocked her way. His voice was steel. "You realize what you've done? Do you think the world cares about old bones and old debts? Do you even love your mother?" Tessa faced him. "You stole her voice, I'm giving it back." He sneered, "We'll see who believes you." "What will it take to make you leave us alone?" Tessa snapped, fists clenched. Lane leaned close, whispering, "Pain, I can promise you that." She didn't flinch. Pain's just another passing storm. IRS agents rolled up minutes later. Lane's face curdled. "This is harassment." The lead agent cut him off. "Step aside, sir, we have probable cause." What the agents found, piled in black crates and waxed envelopes, didn't just damn the children's leaders for tax fraud. It connected decades of backdoor deals and illicit trades, all orchestrated by Pastor Lane and his disciples. Mila watched from the cab, eyes wide but proud. As the dust settled, Tessa was summoned to the probate judge's chambers, her last chance. Inside, Lane stood at one end of the oak table, Jim biting his thumbnail, a swirl of lawyers muttering along the walls. Tessa centered herself, clutching her mother's letter and the photo. The judge glanced over the documents, face unreadable. "Miss Sunderland, you have evidence not previously submitted. Please state your claim." She lifted the letter first. "My mother left these words and these government bonds hidden in the root cellar. These bonds, by compound interest and original title, are now worth more than $80 million. The remains under the cabin are my Aunt Della, hidden 40 years. The proof of purchase and the link to the Children of Solace is here." Lane broke in, voice cracking. "This woman is delusional, my client." Tessa met his eyes, fire in her belly. "Your client laundered the farm, the stocks, everything into accounts belonging to false charities. The IRS has proof of him cashing out bonds worth millions, and you murdered my mother's sister to keep her quiet." Jim shot to his feet, knocking over a chair. "She's bluffing, she always was." The judge's gavel barked, "Enough." She laid out the folder, letters, photos, the notarized police report. The judge turned to Lane. "You are under investigation for fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice." Lane's features buckled, disbelief and rage warring in his eyes. He lunged for the evidence, but a marshal blocked him. Tessa's hands felt like ice. Jim blanched, fists clenching. Lane, eyes wild, spat, "You destroyed every chance I ever had." She slammed the folder on the table. "You stole everything, even Mom's name." The bulb above the table buzzed as she pressed on. "You're done, the lies stop here." Lane's laughter was thin, brittle. "You have no proof." With a slow breath, she slid the marriage certificate across the table, then the SEC's wire report, then the photo of Lane holding the ring. "Read that out loud." Paper fluttered, Lane's fingers shook as he read, color draining from his face. "Where did you get this?" She leaned closer. "Right where you buried the truth, you missed something." Jim scuffed his boots, stammering, "It was all the pastor's idea." The judge motioned to security, "Escort these men out immediately." As Lane was led away, Lane tried one last time. "You'll never understand what it cost." She watched, breathing deep. "I know exactly what it cost." The room softened as people looked at her, some with pity, some with admiration, more with respect than she'd ever seen. Justice at last wasn't a thunderclap. It was the slow, certain movement of truth finally cutting through silence, echoing out for everyone to hear. 3 weeks later, Lane's face stared dully from every TV station, accused of insider trading, money laundering, multiple counts of fraud and obstruction. The IRS moved to seize every last dollar the children held. The ministry shuttered, their compound in ruins within a month. The judge signed off on a trust for Mila and her descendants, locked iron-tight, untouchable by any remnant of Lane's followers. Tessa skipped the bank meeting, instead carrying Mila on her hip down to the Hollow Creek porch as dusk melted gold across the grass. The cabin creaked, but she would repair it brick by brick, as surely as she'd rebuilt her mother's name. She stood on the step thinking of the stone at the porch, of secrets finally aired and every bond, legal and lived, protected, this time for good. Some debts can't be paid with cash, but with memory, breath, and truth told at last. For anyone who's ever found themselves erased by other people's greed, or watched your world be rewritten by those who never knew its value, that's why this story matters. If justice ever feels slow, remember, real justice is the kind that keeps the next door shut to harm. And the door at Hollow Creek, for the first time in decades, was open wide to the sun. Early summer at Hollow Creek brought a tang of cut grass and the thrum of new insects. Tessa stood at the porch rail, paint flecks on her arms, cheeks flushed. Every window now yawned open, fresh air banishing the rot of years' secrets. The place still groaned and splintered, but there was laughter echoing from inside. Mila, her cough easing day by day, kicking up dust as she taught herself hopscotch across sun-warmed planks. Every morning, Tessa woke to the sun rimming the old fields and the timbers creaking above her head, and sometimes she believed she could still hear her mother humming in those first golden hours. Some wounds would never fully close. Yet life grew on burials, she thought, roots making their slow, stubborn way through old scars. Today, Vernon's truck rumbled up the old track, rattling against the new-fitted mailbox. He waved from the driver's seat, mouth twisted in that wry grin only long survivors wear. "Brought something for you," he called, stepping out, a battered envelope clutched in one hand. Tessa set down the paintbrush, hands sticky with primer. "Another bill," she teased, nerves tingling. She took the envelope, recognized the county seal. Vernon nodded at the porch. "Not this time." Mila crawled into her lap as she slid a finger under the seal. Her breath caught, deed of expansion, Sunderland Family Trust. Underneath, in formal script, rights to the entire 45 acres, plus restitution for past theft, enough to keep the farm safe for her daughter, maybe her grandchildren too. I didn't know it could happen," she whispered. "IRS County even stands people, they worked fast once you opened that cellar." Vernon's eyes softened, searching her face. "Not all stories end like this, but it's yours now, as long as you want it." Mila tugged at her sleeve. "Does that mean we can stay forever?" Tessa kissed her daughter's forehead, the old ache subsiding into something bright and sharp. "Yes," she murmured, "we can make anything we want here, all new." Inside, the box from the cellar, now empty but for the letter and Della's ring, sat on the windowsill in a patch of afternoon sun. Sometimes, when she was alone, Tessa turned the ring in her hand, feeling the stories pressed into its grooves. Not just relics or evidence anymore, but links to women she'd been told to forget, whose names now ran like water through every deed, every plan she made for this land. A week later, Vernon brought more news. Stan's trial uncovered 3 more hidden beneficiaries in towns upstate, other families robbed and silenced by the children over the years. "You set something loose when you spoke up," he said, sipping coffee at her kitchen table. "I only wanted a place for Mila to breathe," Tessa replied, voice unsteady. "And you got it, plus a little justice for everyone else." He tipped his mug toward her. Still, some nights shadows gathered thick by the cellar door. The wind pressed at the eaves with secrets. One dark evening, Mila curled beside her, whispering, "Are the bad people coming back?" Tessa wrapped her arms around her daughter, shaking her head. "No, honey, they can't hurt us anymore." She meant it, even as she listened to the woods, alert. After Lane's conviction, the local paper wanted to run her photo alongside a headline that screamed, "Single mother brings down local cult." Tessa declined. Privacy, finally, was a luxury she wouldn't surrender. "Let the story stand," she wrote them. "The names that matter are already carved in stone." Mila thrived as summer burned gold along the fields. Children from nearby farms came to play. Tessa's bread, sourdough and cheese twists, scented with rosemary, became local legend after she reopened the bakery part-time. Vernon delivered flour in bulk. Stan frequented for Saturday scones. The world felt as if it was growing bigger, safer by inches. One morning after a rain, Tessa and Mila walked the southern fence line, checking posts. They stopped by the heart-shaped stone. Tessa stooped, scraping moss from the old carving, "May you rest in truth." Beside it, she pressed a wildflower into the earth, then gently added a second stone, "Love always, T&M." Mila looked up solemn. "Is that for Aunt Della?" "It's for her and for Grandma and for us," Tessa said quietly. "Nobody's forgotten now." The season spun. At the autumn festival, Tessa stood on the school stage, her hand on Mila's back as her little girl, red-cheeked and shining, recited lines about harvest and home. When applause faded, Tessa locked eyes with her old classmates, the shopkeepers, the farmers' wives who'd once whispered about her family's shame. They smiled now. Afterward, an unfamiliar woman approached, silver-haired and soft-eyed. "You're the one from Hollow Creek," she said gently. I think you helped save my sister. She nearly joined the children herself years ago." Tessa felt her throat close but managed. "We look after each other now." The woman nodded, pressing her hand over Tessa's. "That's all any of us can hope." That night she and Mila stargazed from the porch steps, the sky raw and endless above. Mila nestled in close, asking, "Who will live here after us, Mama?" Tessa smiled, not sad. "Whoever needs to remember." A chill ran through the grass as a fox darted past, and for a moment, Tessa glimpsed what her mother must have seen in this wild, stubborn land. Healing wasn't about erasing the darkness, but letting new roots bear it up. The phone rang once, then again. A call from the state's Victims Assistance Board. A grant, the woman explained, for trauma recovery to help Mila breathe cleaner air, to repair the land, maybe even build a small clinic at the edge of her property. Tessa wept, soft and long, in her kitchen when the call ended, gratitude flooding every wound that had once seemed incurable. Years might yet bring heartache. The cabin would need new floors, a roof before winter, 1,000 small repairs. Storms would hammer wood and memory. But as Mila's laughter rang out under the eaves, Tessa felt finally, quietly equipped to meet anything ahead. On the anniversary of the hearing, the darkest, bravest day of her life, Tessa opened every blind and every door. She baked rolls sweet with honey, sent slices to every neighbor. At dusk, Vernon appeared with a bottle of cider. Stan's wife dropped off a bouquet of wild sunflowers. Friends now, not just spectators. She poured cider into jelly jars, lifting one in a toast. "To all that survives," she said into the softening, golden light, "and all that's coming next." Mila, eyes half closed in sleep, mumbled, "To truth, Mama, and to us." "Always to us," Tessa replied. Outside, wind chased through fields newly planted, scattering seed and memory alike. The cabin, once a coffin for all her mother had lost, stood shining, a real home at last. No one would ever erase her again. The land, the name, the future, she held them all. And with each dawn, as sun spilled bright and sure across the porch, Tessa Sunderland believed, for the first time, that hope was a thing you could inherit. And it grew, root and branch, through every door you dared to open wide. One wild, bright spring not long after, Tessa found herself catching a familiar laugh, high and bright, from down by the creek. Mila and 2 local boys were rolling marbles through a patch of soft mud, their knees grass-stained, their shouts echoing clear. Tessa paused in the garden's furrows, hands caked with earth, and breathed it in, sun and turned soil and the kind of safety you can't buy. Vernon ambled over from the lane, holding a sheet of newsprint crumpled in one fist. "Got your name in the city paper again," he announced, offering up the page. Only this time it's about your bread. Mayor wants to know if you'll cater the founder's gala. She barked a laugh, sweeping hair behind one ear. Tell the mayor he can pay in advance and drive it himself. But pride swelled in her chest, no longer the girl people whispered about, but a woman whose work lined their tables. She glanced toward the porch where Della's ring, looped onto a ribbon, swung a little in the wind. A sign, maybe, a benediction. Vernon circled the edge of the bed, nudging aside seedlings. He nodded toward a stand of young elms, saplings she'd planted with Mila that autumn. You planting this much, you'll have shade by the time your grandkids run wild out here. She smiled, soft and sure. That's the idea, something lasting. He hesitated, then leaned in, voice gentle. You ever think about leaving all this behind, starting over where folks do know? She considered, remembering the fear that had once clung to her like a second skin, but she shook her head. No, Vernon, not anymore. This is ours, the hard parts and the good. We stay. He grinned, patting her shoulder. That's what I figured you'd say. They stood a moment as the children's laughter drifted up, filling the clear sky. That night thunder rolled far off, a soft reminder instead of a threat. Tessa sat curled in the easy chair, Mila's head heavy on her lap, a book open but forgotten. She let her hands rest where they were, content. On the windowsill, the old tin box held nothing but the letter, but every promise inside had been kept. As rain began to tap at the roof, she whispered, "We're safe here, love." Mila stirred, dreaming, murmured, "Always." Tessa pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Always." She closed her eyes, warmth spreading in the hush. Outside, the storm passed, the land breathing beneath it, fertile, patient, waiting. And as dark gave way to another dawn, Tessa knew with a certainty built from every hard-won day, the story hadn't just ended. It had rooted so deep, it would flower, wild and unafraid, for many lives to come.